Alright everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today we're doing the rules tier list. So, just like every other tier list, there's kind of a few different things I want to go through. First of all, you might notice this tier list looks kind of different because we're structuring this a bit different. So, we have completely reasonable at the top. These are rules that make sense all throughout and we don't got to do anything to them. Mostly reasonable, makes sense most of the time. Some applications maybe not, kind of reasonable, sometimes not, not very reasonable. I'm sure you get the gist by this point. But another thing I want to say is as lifeguards, you're probably a lifeguard if you're watching this. Just because I put a rule at not reasonable, we still have to do our job at the end of the day. So don't let this video get in the way of what you're supposed to do. This is just food for thought. And last thing I want to talk about is that there's probably some rules I'm forgetting. I tried to include most of them. There's like 44 different rules here, but yeah, there's probably a few I'm forgetting. But something I want to say is that we're not including rules that people don't break. Because something that you might know about me is I like to go down the slide in chairs, but that's not really a rule that people break now, do they? So we're not including rules like that where it's very obviously not something that people would do. But without further ado, let's get into it. Now, first rule is alcohol. Now, I'd say alcohol, completely reasonable, you don't want drunk people in the pool. That could probably lead to like someone drowning. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory there. Climbing. Like climbing over walls and I don't know. I guess just walls. I don't know what else they'd climb on. But I'm gonna put this in like kind of reasonable cuz like someone could definitely get hurt, but at the same time like come on, like certain applications it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, like seems like kind of babying to me. All right, next thing, goggles that cover the nose. Uh, Not very reasonable because like I get like the whole Red Cross thing, like oh we can't have the extra step of the nose thing covering the nose, like that's like an official rule, but at the same time, like come on, that takes like 2 seconds. Like it's not gonna do anything. And it's even weirder how like certain kids have like exceptions to it, like some kids it just doesn't matter if we have to do the extra step, like it seems kind of ridiculous to me, but whatever. Next thing, this is kind of a new rule, shaking the mushroom. I'd say this is completely reasonable because like it could damage the mushroom. No real reason to do this honestly other than just like if you're being a hooligan. So yeah, that makes sense. Running, yeah, completely reasonable because you could get hurt. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, next one. Backwards lazy river. I'm gonna put this in kind of reasonable because like it depends on when you're doing it. Like if no one's in the lazy river and you want to go backwards, I don't see anything wrong with that. But if there's a ton of people going down the lazy river and you're going backwards, you're kind of like being a nuisance and going against the flow. So that makes sense. So yeah, kind of reasonable. Next thing we got water wings. Um Put it in kind of reasonable cuz like apparently like there's a rule where we don't allow flotation devices that aren't approved by the US Coast Guard or something. But I don't know. I don't really understand this one because, like, I mean, they have like protection; they're not going to drown. But apparently, like, it just doesn't have chest support and back support, and that's bad. So I don't know. I feel like it should be up to the parents to kind of decide what they do with like the kid and all that. But anyway, next up we got vaping and smoking. I'm gonna put this in mostly reasonable just because like it makes sense, but I feel like you should be able to like vape and smoke if you're like in like the corner and you're far away from everyone else. I don't see a problem with that. But yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Now tense. This is basically because like people might be doing bad stuff in the tent and like people can't see it. I don't know. I'll put it in kind of reasonable because they could be drinking alcohol, they could be vaping or smoking, or they could just be normal people. You really don't know. Getting in and out of the leisure pool at non-designated spots. This doesn't make any sense to me. Like, the only reason I can think of this being a rule is like some kid jumps in the pool and happens to like jump on top of someone else. That is the only thing that makes sense. But then why don't we have that rule at the comp pool? Like, that doesn't make any sense. This rule, I don't understand why this is a thing. This is dumb. All right, throwing things in the pool. This hasn't even been a rule for most of Menlo history until some person complained, and now we have to enforce it. This is just a dumb rule. Water guns. I'm gonna put it in not very reasonable because, like, if people are being a nuisance with the water gun, then that makes sense. But if they're just kind of containing it to them and their friends only, I don't see why you'd have to like get rid of it. All right, sitting on walls. I'm going to put this in mostly reasonable. Apparently, the reasoning behind this is that, like, you could fall back and hit your head or something, which, I don't know, I guess that makes sense. And I feel like if you're sitting on walls, that could be, like, obstructing visibility for the lifeguards. I don't know how good that is. All right. Next up, we got lane lines. This is freaking retarded. Like, I don't understand this one at all. Like, oh, if someone leans on the lane lines, it's gonna damage them. Oh no! Like, nah, bruh. This ain't happening. Like, I don't know who's responsible for this. I don't know if PAC says you can't do it or if Menlo says you can't do it. But either way, y'all gotta chill out. Nothing's gonna happen. All right. Next up, 48 inches and slim bands and stuff. Completely reasonable. Something about like insurance companies with the 48 inches thing. I don't really know, but makes sense to me. Swim band, if you can't swim, kind of makes sense. You can't go down the slide. Next up, we got goggles on the slides and the diving board. I don't know. I'd say this is like kind of reasonable because I can understand both points of view on this. Because, like, if you're a person going down the slide or going on the diving board, like, it's kind of dumb. You have to like take your goggles off. But if you're a staff member and someone loses their goggles and you got to go get it, that's kind of like unreasonable too. So I feel like it's like, all right. Next up, we got diving blocks. This is kind of like the same thing as lane lines. Like, someone sitting on the diving block, or actually, no. I'm going to put this a little above because diving blocks, like, if you're sitting on the top, like, I guess you could, like, maybe fall down or something, which I guess that's bad. But if I'm sitting on, like, the diving block or if I'm just grabbing onto those bars, like, it doesn't make a difference. Like, nothing's going to happen. No one's going to get hurt. Nothing's going to get damaged. Y'all got to chill out. All right. Climbing on empty lifeguard stands. Now, y'all might think this is like a little bit outlandish, but I've seen people do this before. Like, this is pretty obviously a justified rule because, like, if you don't work at Menlo, you can't go on the lifeguard stands. Pretty self explanatory. Next up, we got slide orientation. I'm going to put this in mostly reasonable because, like, if you go down head first, that's bad because you could, like, hurt your head. But I don't understand why you can't go down on your stomach feet first. Like, how are you going to get hurt doing that? That doesn't make any sense. All right, next up, we got tubes in the whirlpool slash comp pool slash play place area. What is that called? Frickin' the activity pool? Yeah, I think that's what it's called. But it makes sense for the whirlpool. It doesn't make sense for the comp pool and the play place. Because whirlpool, it's a very confined area. And putting a tube in there is going to take up a lot of space. So I kind of get that. Comp pool, I don't get it. Like, really? Are we for real? And then, like, the activity pool, I don't get that either. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Next up, we got the emergency lane. That's going to go in completely reasonable because if something bad happens, people shouldn't be kind of like hanging out in that lane. All right, one person on the rock wall. I'm gonna put this in kind of reasonable because I feel like there is kind of a chance that people like could maybe get hurt. But I feel like if you have two people on the rock wall, okay, like one person's here and one person's here, they both climb up, they fall down. Unless they like fall down at some weird diagonal angle, they're not gonna hit each other. So like I don't understand that. I feel like if we have two people on the rock wall, it would run a lot more efficiently. But nah, I guess we can't do that. All right, older kids in the baby pool. I'm gonna put this in kind of reasonable because if there's a bunch of kids in the pool and they're being a nuisance, then it makes sense. But if like no one's there, then I don't see why they can't just like kind of hang out and just do their thing. So whatever. Rough housing. I'm gonna put this in not very reasonable because like I feel like if you're just like messing around and rough housing, that doesn't really like you're not gonna get hurt doing that. Like I feel like if someone's actually like trying to hurt someone, that's a completely different thing. And this just doesn't make sense. Like, oh, if you're grabbing their head, they might get hurt. But like, nah, bro. If you're just rough housing with your homies, like nothing bad's gonna happen. Next up, we got one person per tube. I don't know. I don't really understand this one. This seems just kind of like a party pooper rule. Like, I don't know. Diving board tricks, completely reasonable because you don't want people like doing backflips and getting hurt. You know, we haven't had a spinal at Menlo so far, and this is probably the reason why. So that makes sense. Next up, we got overflowing the slide. Completely reasonable. Most people don't do this except for hooligans. Like, there's this one particular kid. He sits there and purposefully overflows the slide. Like, that's crazy work. Like, it just makes sense. Next up, we got the whale. Um, this is kind of just like climbing on the whale and stuff. I'm gonna put this in mostly reasonable because, like, I don't know, some little kid might climb on the whale and then fall off and start crying, I guess. So that makes sense. Now, this is comp 3 hanging out. This is kind of like when people hang out in the corner, like by the lane lines. I feel like I'm gonna put this in kind of reasonable because I can understand both perspectives. Like if you're a patron, nothing's going on there. It makes sense. You can just kind of chill there. But if you're like a lifeguard, this area is reserved for like going down the slide and things. So it shouldn't be like a hangout area. Next up, we got holding your breath challenge. I'll put this in mostly reasonable, or not completely reasonable, because it's kind of worrying as a lifeguard if you're like looking at the pool and people are just sitting there and they're not coming up under the water. It's a little concerning. All right, next up we got hanging out by the leisure slide. I'm gonna put this in mostly reasonable because like someone coming down the slide could hit the people that are sitting there. But I feel like if you're like off to the side, it won't really affect you. But I don't know. Excessive splashing. I'm gonna put this in kind of reasonable because if they're being a nuisance, then it makes sense. But if they're by themselves and they're not disturbing anyone, I don't see why they can't do it. Flips on the rock wall. I don't know. Freaking mostly reasonable because like people could get hurt, I guess. I feel like this is different from the diving board because like if you do it on the diving board, there's like a much higher chance you could get hurt versus like doing it on the rock wall. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just kind of my philosophy on it. Next up, we have like swapping swim bands. Um, this is completely reasonable because if you didn't earn the swim band, you don't really have the right to use it. You know, pretty self-explanatory. One diving board, I'm gonna say completely reasonable because you know, you don't want like them kind of going in conflict with what's happening at the rock wall. Like that could definitely lead to something bad. Jumping to the side of the diving board. This doesn't make any sense. Like, if someone wants to jump to the side, nothing bad's gonna happen. Like, I feel like the only reason this might be a thing is like, oh, they might jump on top of someone. But like, these people aren't idiots. Like, they're gonna look and make sure the people aren't in the way before jumping. Like, I've never seen someone jump on top of someone before. This is ridiculous. Next up, one tube per person. Not reasonable. Just because, like, I feel like the only reason this would be a thing is like a tall stack of tubes would like obstruct visibility. But I mean, we got multiple different lifeguards, they got multiple different angles on the pool, so it doesn't really make sense, I'd say. Next up, we have diving in shallow areas. That makes sense. You could hit your head and get hurt. One bounce on the diving board. Um, Completely reasonable. Actually, nah. Mostly reasonable. Cause like, yeah, you could get hurt, but I feel like no one's gonna get like that hurt, like freaking bouncing more than once. Like, come on. It makes sense. Like, I can't give it too much flack. One at a time on the diving board. This is kind of dumb. I don't understand this. Like, or actually, I do kind of understand it, but I'm gonna put it in kind of reasonable. Cause like, it makes sense if like two people are on the diving board and they want to jump. But if one person's about to jump on one end and one person is hanging out at the very end, I don't understand why you can't just hang out at the end, wait for the person to jump, and then you can just go forward and jump yourself. Like, I don't like it makes sense in some applications. Sometimes it doesn't though. Next up we got don't touch the wheel, like the fulcrum on the diving board. I don't know. It's kind of dumb. Like, if you're like knowledgeable enough to like understand the difference, like you should just kind of like be able to do that. Like, you want to have your own customization for how you jump. Like, no one's gonna get hurt doing this. Like, it's there for a reason. It's there so like the diving team or whatever, they can change how they jump. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, just kind of stupid rule. Jumping down the stairs. I'm gonna put this in not very reasonable because like I feel like someone could like jump on top of someone, I guess, but at the same time, like that's not gonna happen. Like, people are gonna look and make sure they're not jumping on top of people, and like they're not gonna get hurt in any other way. Like, this kind of like a party pooper rule, I guess. Eating in the pool, that makes sense because you're gonna pollute the pool with food potentially. Just seems like a recipe for disaster. And then finally, we have go to the closest ladder. So this is kind of referring to like how when you jump off the diving board, you have to go to the ladder off to the side, or you have to go to your designated ladder in the activity like area for what thing you're doing. Like, I feel like this mostly makes sense because it's kind of a conflict of interest. Like, you don't want to get in the way of what other people are doing, but I feel like this is kind of reasonable because like it just depends on the circumstances. Like, if you're gonna get in the way, fine. If you're not, then it's kind of dumb. But oh well. So this is the completed rules tier list. So as we can see, most rules kind of make sense to some extent. Some rules don't really make sense. Like, I'd say these rules down here, let's get rid of all these rules right now. These are dumb rules. But like I said in the beginning, this video isn't going to do much. Like, no one's going to change the Menlo rules because of this video. So we all just have to keep in mind these are actual rules and we have to do our job and enforce all of them, no matter what you feel about them. But anyway, that's the completed video. So like, subscribe, share, and all that. Thanks for watching, and peace out.